Good morning, students. Today we are going to learn about small intestine. In the previous classes, we have studied about the stomach, the liver, and the gallbladder, and also the pancreas. So we have clearly understood and studied about the anatomy, histology of all these organs involved in digestive process, and also we have studied what are the secretions of the different organs and what are the functions of the enzymes. Now, in today's class, we are going to study about the small intestine, the anatomy of the small intestine, the histology of the small intestine, what are the secretions, especially about the microvilli, and also the absorption of the small intestine. Now, the digestive system, as you all know, consists of various parts. So, intestine follows the stomach. So, immediately after the stomach, you have the small intestine, and it is divided into three regions. What are the three regions of the small intestine? As you can see in the picture, it is divided into duodenum, jejunum, and ileum. So these are the three regions of the small intestine, and this is the second largest region of the digestive system, second to the large intestine. The first one is the large intestine. The second longest region of the digestive system is the small intestine. So, what are the different regions of the small intestine? Duodenum, jejunum, and ileum. This is the small intestine is a very long tube. So what is the main function of the small intestine? The main function of the small intestine is digestion and absorption. So maximum digestion of almost all the nutrients, whether it is carbohydrate, proteins, lipids, vitamins, minerals, water, everything takes place in the small intestine. And also this is a main place where the absorption also takes place. So absorption of about 90 to 95% about all the nutrients are carried out in the small intestine. Okay. Now, what are the functions, structures of the small intestine? We are going to see the structure of the small intestine. As you can see from the picture, the stomach opens into the, the first region of the small intestine, that is the duodenum. So how it opens? It opens. Uh, there is a junction called as the pyloric sphincter. Okay, the pyloric sphincter is the valve which opens the contents of the food. That is the chyme from the small allows the chyme to flow into the duodenum from the stomach. Okay, so this is the this duodenum is a, as you can see, is a J-shaped or a C-shaped structure. It is not exactly seen here. It is a C-shaped or J-shaped structure, and it extends to the next region, jejunum and the ileum. Okay, jejunum and the ileum. So what is the length of the small this duodenum? The total length of the duodenum is around 3 meters. You can say 3 meters. That is, the ileum is around 2 meters, jejunum is around 1 meter, and the duodenum is the smallest. It is about 10 inches in length. Okay, so the total length of the small intestine, that is the duodenum, jejunum, and ileum, is 3 meters, 3 meters and 10 inches. So, in a normal living individual, this is the length of the small intestine. But in a cadaver, what happens? The length of the small intestine elongates up to 21 feet. Okay, 21 feet. So, the 21 feet, which is equal to 6.5 meters. How? Why? Because of the loss of the smooth muscle activity. The smooth muscles, inside the digestive system becomes loosened and they all relax. So because of this, the length of the small intestine is very much elongated, say around 6.5 meters, or 20 to 20 22 or 23 feet in length. Okay, now we will see all the regions one by one. So first region is the jejunum. You can see it is a C-shaped structure or a J-shaped structure. It is the shortest region of the small intestine when you compare it with the jejunum and the ileum. So it is retroperitoneal. You can see it is on the other side. All the others are in the front, whereas you can see cannot see the duodenum because it is retroperitoneal, just like the kidney. This is retroperitoneal. So the stomach opens into the duodenum through the pyloric sphincter. Okay, so what is the length of the duodenum? It is around 25 centimeters or 10 inches. Okay, and the next region is the jejunum. So the jejunum, the length of the jejunum is around 1 meter or 3 feet in length. So this will extend into the next region, ileum. So the length of the ileum is around 2 meters. So totally it is a 3 meters and 10 inches in length. So the last end of the ileum opens into the large intestine through a valve or a sphincter muscle called as the ileocecal sphincter. Okay, ileocecal sphincter. So that we will see when you study about the large intestine. Okay. Now this particular structure shows the inner foldings of the small intestine. So the inner wall of the small intestine, you cannot even see the lumen. See, it is the inner walls of the small intestine, starting from the duodenum. The uh, the diameter of the duodenum is around 12. That is the 12 inches. Okay, it is the sorry 12 centimeter. It is the length of the width of the 12 fingers when you keep it together. This is the length. Okay, that is the diameter of the duodenum. So you can see there are many foldings in the lumen called as the circular folds or the plicae circularis. Okay, circular folds or plicae circularis. So these foldings highly increase the surface area of the small intestine, and also the chyme which is flowing into the small intestine it does not flow smoothly down. It takes some time, and this movement of the time in the small intestine, it's like a segmentation movement. Okay, this segmentation movement, that the circular muscles of the small intestine contract and relax segment by segment. Okay, first one segment will contract, the next segment will relax. So the next segment will contract, and the previous segment will relax. So because of this movement, the fluid or the chyme, the food substances which is present inside the lumen, will get sloshed this side and that side. Okay, it is like spiral movement. You can see spiraling. So it's spirally they keep moving like this through the lumen. You can see the spaces. The dark color line is the space in between the circular folds. So the chyme will be able to move along with the space, that is the folds. So it is like a spiral kind of movement. So the segmentation, this is the main function of the small intestine. The muscles present in the small intestine allow the movement of the chyme, which contains the digestive juice, in a segmental movement called as a segmentation. You can see this is the very important function of the small intestine. So this segmentation mixes the chyme along with the digestive juice very well. This segmentation, because of the presence of the circular fold, highly increases the surface area of the small intestine, especially the duodenum, where the digestive juices are secreted. The digestive juices from the pancreas, from the liver, and the duodenum itself secretes into the space, into the duodenal region. So this will be act upon the nutrients, and which will mix the food, make the food into contact with the individual digestive enzymes and easily enable the digestion. So almost the digestion will be completed in the small intestine. That is the duodenal region. The 90% of the digestion will be completed in this duodenal region, and immediately the absorption also begins. So absorption also begins, and by the time they come out of the small intestine, 90 to 95% of the absorption will be over. So what is the second function? The second function is the complete digestion of the carbohydrates, proteins, lipids. So that all these three things are completely digested, and the digestion of the nucleic acid begins here. The next function is the absorption of nutrients. As I told you, 90% of the nutrients and water that come out of the small intestine will be absorbed. By the time it comes out of small intestine, it will be absorbed. Okay, so 90% of nutrients are absorbed by the small intestine. So now we have to see the histology of the small intestine. Okay, so you all know the histology of the digestive system. It consists of mucosa, submucosa, muscularis, and serous. So as you all are well aware, what is what is mucosa? Mucosa contains that is the outermost epithelial cells. So what is the name of the epithelial cells? It is simple columnar epithelial cells. You can see the epithelial cells are very well built. It is lining the entire length of the entire inner length of the the mucosa, which is protruding into the lumen. It is protruding into the lumen. So the exposed side of the mucosa contains the epithelial cells. So these there are different kinds of cells present in this. In the next slide you can see what are the different types of cells. The important ones are absorptive cells, okay, and goblet secreting cells, Paneth cells, and enteroendocrine cells are present. We will see what are the secretions of all the cells. So the first lining is the mucosa. So mucosa is made up of outermost simple columnar epithelial cells followed by lamina propria. You can see the lamina propria is inside, okay, well inside, and it extends into the submucosal region. It extends from the mucosal region into the submucosa region, and this is the place where the the microvilli is present. The microvilli, the arteriole venule lymphatic vessel of the microvilli flow into the lamina propria of each and every microvilli. So this is a very very important region of the that is the lamina propria. Next is the muscularis mucosae. So the muscularis mucosae is present here, and you can also see the lymphatic nodules, MALT, MALT. So what is MALT? Mucosa associated lymphatic tissue. Okay, this MALT, these are present in the lamina propria. So they are apart from the malt, they contain other cells called as the lymphatic nodules. So small lymphatic nodules, you can see from the picture here. You can see malt is present and small lymphatic nodules are present. So they are present in most part of the ileum. Okay, most part of the ileum it is present. So what is the importance of these? It is very important in the immunological functions. Okay, lymphatic nodules. So the nodules are present in groups. They are aggregated forms. They are called as the Peyer's patches. So they are otherwise called as aggregated lymphatic follicles or Peyer's patches. So what are Peyer's patches? A group of lymphatic nodule. Okay, when they are aggregated together, you know what is the meaning of aggregation? Grouping together. They are called as that is the solitary lymphatic nodules grouped together to form aggregates. So they are called as aggregated lymphatic follicles or Peyer's patches. Okay, so that is the region. The next region is the submucosa. So the submucosa of the duodenum, it contains very important gland called as the duodenal gland. So these duodenal glands are otherwise called as Brunner's gland. Okay, they contain the Brunner's gland. So the submucosa, this region, you can see this particular region, they contain the duodenal glands. So we will see what is the importance of the duodenal glands. The other name for the duodenal gland is Brunner's gland. So they secrete an alkaline mucus. Okay, they secrete an alkaline mucus fluid. So which this helps in the neutralization of the gastric juice which is coming along with the time. So the food which is coming out of the stomach will be highly acidic. So they have to be neutralized because the pancreatic enzymes will not act in an acidic environment. They will act only in an alkaline environment. So the acidic pH should be neutralized. So along with the bile salt and bile acids, so this play a very very important role in neutralizing because they secrete an alkaline mucus fluid which will help in the neutralizing of the gastric acid. Okay, so here the next region is the muscularis mucosa. You can see this is the region. This is the muscularis mucosae. So this consists of two layers. Okay, two layers of smooth muscles. So you can see outer layer is a thinner layer which contains longitudinal fibers, and the inner layer is made up of circular fibers. Okay, so outer layer is made up of longitudinal fibers, and the inner layer is made up of circular fibers. Okay, so the next layer, This is the muscularis. So muscularis, you can see here also it contains circular layer of muscles. So this here also you can see circular layer of muscles and outer longitudinal layer. In the muscularis region also you can see circular layer of muscles and the longitudinal layer. So here you can see the presence of myenteric plexus. So the myenteric plexus, you all know, it is the intrinsic nervous system. So they are present in this region, so which will be helpful in the coordination or the transmission of nervous impulses. The last layer is the serosa. So serosa, it's the outermost layer and it is in continuous with the visceral peritoneum. This completely surrounds the small intestine. Okay, this is the layer which completely surrounds the small intestine. So next we will move on to the different cells, okay, of the villi. So what is villi? Villi are, microvilli or villus. So they are the protrusion of the inner wall of the this one inner wall of the duodenal region. Not only the duodenal region, the other regions of the small intestine also contains many microvilli. Okay, they are finger-like projections, as you can see here, and they are so many in number. Okay, they are so many in number. And where it is present, we can go to the previous picture where you can see the circular folds, or it is called as the plicae circularis. So they are the folds of the mucosa and submucosa. As I told you, the microvilli elongates from the mucosa to the submucosa. Okay, so they are around 10 millimeter long, 10 millimeter long, and it begins from the duodenal region and extends into the ileum, that is the jejunum and the ileum, all the way down. Okay, so that the it increases the that is the surface area and, available for absorption, and increases the rate of absorption. So as I told you, the segmentation movement will mix the chyme and allow the chyme to flow in a spiral manner, so it easily gets mixed with the digestive juices. Okay, so here, so this portion, the enlarged portion, is a small portion, will contain the micro, that is a villi. So this is each and every small villi. They are present in the circular fold. Okay. So what is a villi? Villi is a small finger-like projection or hair. It is a hair-like projections which are present, in the mucosa and extends into the submucosa. You can see from the picture, it is present in the mucosa region and it also extends down into the submucosa region. So what is the diameter? I mean, it is around zero point 0.5 to 1 millimeter in length, and around 20 to 40 microvilli are present in 1 square millimeter. So because of this, it increases the surface area of the epithelial cells and it increases the digestion, it secretes the digestive juices, and you can see there are small pits here. So the in between the two microvilli there are small pits. These are called as the intestinal gland. There is the openings of the intestinal gland. So here, this is the region where the digestive juices are secreted. So apart from this, we have the duodenal glands, that is the Brunner's glands, secrete many different enzymes. Okay, enteroendocrine enzymes. Okay, into the this particular region. This is called as the pit. This is called as the intestinal gland. So between each and every microvilli, there are some openings or pit-like region called as the intestinal gland. So each villi, you can see from this picture, each villi, this is the enlarged picture of the villi, consists of an external epithelial cells. Okay, consists of an external epithelial cell, and you can see the tip of the epithelials, each and every cell contains very small hair-like projections. Okay, so they are actually called as the microvilli. This is the microvilli. So villi and the microvilli. So this hair-like projections, it is very very small, about 1 to 1.5 micrometer in length. Okay, so their projections are you cannot see through the naked eye. Even in the microscope, you can see it is a tuft of hair like structures, which is giving like a brush border. So they are actually called as brush border. So the enzyme secreted by this region is called as the brush border enzymes. Okay, the brush border enzymes. Now let us look at the structure of the microvilli. So the epithelial, outermost epithelial cells. It is made up of simple columnar epithelial cells. So they contain many number of different types of cells. Number one is the absorptive cell. So the absorptive cell, or the tip of the absorptive cell, contains the hair-like structure called as the microvilli. So there are around millions of microvilli, 200 to 300 millions of microvilli present in 1 square millimeter. Okay, present in 1 square millimeter. So the first one is the absorptive cell. You can see the structure. This is this region where the absorption of the nutrients takes place. Okay, so absorption of the nutrients takes place in the absorptive cell. The next one is the goblet cells. So as you all know, goblet cells secrete mucus. Okay, so mucus secreting goblet cells are present. The third one is the blue colored one, enteroendocrine cells. So the enteroendocrine cells secrete different hormones. So they secrete secretin. Okay, the cells secreting this particular hormone is called as S cells. Okay, S cells secrete secretin, and there are another cells called as CCK cells. So CCK cells secrete cholecystokinin, and a third kind of cell called as the K cell. So K cell secrete GIP. So GIP, the name of GIP is the glucose dependent insulinotropic peptide. So these are the different hormones secreted by the enteroendocrine cells. The next one is the Paneth cells. So what is the role of the Paneth cells? They secrete lysozyme. Okay, lysozyme, which enables the phagocytosis and the engulfing of the the foreign particles which are coming along with the chyme. So that is the role of the Paneth cells. Now you can see this is inside the lamina propria. You can see here the different circulation. Okay, you can see the red colored one is the arteriole. See, arteriole is entering each and every microvilli, and they divide into many capillaries. You can see the smaller ones. The branches of the arteriole itself is very very minute. The branches of the arteriole is called as the capillaries. They unite to form venules, and they join, to form a venule. You can see this is the minute venule, blue colored one, which is coming out of a single microvilli. So microvilli is very very small. It is around 1.5 to 1 millimeter in length. So you can imagine the length or size of the arteriole, the capillaries, and the venule. So this connects with the rest of the region, rest of the that is the blood network, blood vessels. Inside you can see there is another network called as the lacteal. Okay, so the lymphatic vessel enters, they branch into smaller vessels called as the lacteal. Okay, so the absorption of the glucose and amino acid is taken up by the it enters, it is transported into the blood arteriole, and the absorption of the fat is done by the into the lacteal. It is taken up by the lacteal. Okay, and then flows into the other system. So this is the structure of the villi and the microvilli. Was what is microvilli? Microvilli are small, very small, tough like hair like projections. No, they are very very active. So they keep moving to and fro, and they are very active and helpful in the absorption of the nutrients, digested nutrients. So the movement is enabled by actin filaments. So we will study about the actin filaments when we study about the muscle. Okay, so about 20 to 30 actin filaments are there, present in each and every microvilli, and they are very very they cannot be seen through the naked eye. So they are under the microscope. You can see it is like a fuzzy or frizzy structure, brush border, called as the brush border, and they are very very important in the absorption of the nutrients. So this is the histology of the duodenum and ileum. Okay, so here you see this is a, gives a very zoomed up picture. Okay, that is you can see the mucous, that is the microvilli. You can see these are the intestinal glands. The pits or the openings of the microvilli are called as intestinal glands, and the various regions you can see the mucosa extends up to here, and then goes the submucosa and the muscularis. So in the mucosa contains the epithelium, the lamina propria, and the muscularis. Okay, muscularis mucosae, etc. And then this is the submucosal region where you can see the malt cells, and the muscularis, the circular and longitudinal ones. So this is a picture showing the villi. Okay, three villi are shown here, and you can see this is the lumen, and these are the microvilli, which is called as the brush border, which are present on the columnar epithelial cells. Apart from this, there are many cells: absorptive cells, goblet cells, Paneth cells, and the enteroendocrine cells. So these are the lamina propria. This is the region where the arteriole veins and lacteals enter into the microvilli. Okay, this is the next region, duodenal mucosa, and you have the duodenal gland called as the Brunner's gland present in the the openings of the gland, interstitial gland. It is called as the Brunner's gland. We will move on to the next picture. These are the several microvilli. The microvilli, very small microvilli, they're magnified. These are the brush borders. Okay, brush borders. Initially, we have seen about the solitary lymphatic nodules. That is the Peyer's patch. When these nodules group up together to form aggregated lymphatic system, called as the Peyer's patches. So these are the single nodules present. Okay, so these are the magnified picture of the brush border. So now we will move on to the digestion. What happens in the small intestine? Okay, what kind of digestion happens in the small intestine? How it is happening? We will see. So, two types of digestion is taking place in the small intestine. So number one is the mechanical digestion, and the number two is the enzymatic or chemical digestion. So we will see this one by one. The two types of digestion. The first one is the mechanical digestion. So the mechanical digestion involves two types of movement. Okay, one is called the segmentation, and the other one is called as the migrating motility complex or the peristalsis. So the first one is segmentation. Okay, so what is segmentation? Segmentations, as I told you in the beginning, they are the movement of the individual. There is a diameter, diameter, length of the duodenum, jejunum, and ileum takes place segment by segment. So diameter by diameter, it takes place diameter by. This is one segment. Okay, so when first one segment contracts, the other segment relaxes. Then followed by the contraction just migrates to the next region. So next region contracts, the previous region relaxes. So it goes on like you can see it's a wave-like motion. Okay, it is a wave-like motion, or you can say, how you take out a toothpaste from a toothbrush. Okay, so slowly it starts here. So how you take it out, or you can say the wave-like motion. It goes segment by segment, segment by segment. Okay, so during one contraction, what happens? The chyme gets mixed up. It is so the chyme flows in the lumen of the small intestine in a spiral manner, spiraling movement. Okay, so what are segmentation? They are localized contraction. Okay, they are localized contraction, not like unlike peristalsis. It is a complete contraction. So the peristalsis will allow the transport of the food from one region to another region, but here this segmentation helps in the mixing rather than transport. So because one segment is contracting, these they are called as the localized contraction, helpful in the mixing, localized mixing contraction. That is what you call. So that the chyme, large volume of chyme which is coming out of the stomach will undergo. They can easily move and touch all the epithelial cells of the lining, as a mucosal region, and it can easily be acted upon by the enzyme secreted by the duodenal gland, the pancreatic juice. It gets mixed very well. Okay, pancreatic juice and the bile. So this mixing will help in the you know yeah, the contact of the nutrients to the individual enzymes. Okay, so this the here what happens? The digestive juices come in close contact with the food along the tract, and it gets easily converted or digested into individual components. The next one is the migrating motility complex. So this is nothing but the peristaltic movement. Okay, so migrating movement, this is the peristaltic movement. This transports the chyme from stomach into start the this peristalsis starts from the stomach. Okay, it goes like that. The segmentation also starts segment by stomach, from the stomach. segment by segment from the stomach and goes on downwards. But the peristaltic movement transports the chyme, okay, forward. It pushes it forward to the next region, and next region, and so on, so that it empties in from one region to the goes on to the next region. So that is how it happens. It is called as the migrating motility complex. Okay, so you can say the segmentation happens around 12 times per minute. Okay, 12 times per minute in the duodenal region, and as it goes down, the number of movements is reduced around 8 times per minute in the ileum. This is what is happening. Whereas the MMC, that is the migrating motility complex, is taking place very slowly. Okay, so it takes around 90 to 120 minutes. Okay, 1 hour, 1.5 hours to 2 hours to complete. Okay, completely transfer the contents from the stomach to the next region. That is the come out of the small intestine. So this is what is happening. These are the two movements which will help in the mechanical digestion, sloshing, spiral movement, mixing, okay, and the transport of the chyme from the stomach to the end of the small intestine. Now we will see what is chemical digestion. Okay, so chemical digestion, what happens? So the food from the stomach, what happens to the food from the stomach? The stomach secretes enzymes like pepsin, renin, okay, gastric lipase, and so on. So the food which is present in the which is coming out of the stomach, no, it will be acted upon by the HCl, and it will be denatured. And because of the large secretions of the stomach, it will be completely converted into a liquid, more like liquid consistency. That is why it is called as chyme. Now this chyme reaches the duodenal. First region of the small intestine is the duodenum. So this partially digested food reaches the duodenal regions. Okay, so the food would have already been acted upon by salivary amylase, lingual lipase in the mouth, and also the pepsin, gastric lipase in the uh, stomach. Okay, but the major function is the salivary amylase would have converted the starch into maltose, maltotriose, and dextrins. So maltose is a disaccharide, maltotriose is a trisaccharide, and dextrin will contain around 10 or more glucose units. Similarly, the lingual lipase, a small amount, will convert the triglycerides into fatty acid and triglyceride, whereas the gastric juice does not have any action upon the carbohydrates. It will act upon, mainly on the proteins and convert them to peptides. Whereas a very small or negligible amount of gastric lipase will act upon the triglycerides to convert them into fatty acid and cholesterol. Okay, now the duodenum contains all the secretions of the pancreas, the secretions of the liver, everything flows into the duodenal region. So not only this, the duodenal enzymes or the brush border enzymes also flows into the duodenal region. So this is the major site of digestion. Okay, so major site of digestion where the digestion is completed. Almost 90 to 95% digestion is completed in the duodenum. So this is what is happening. Now let us see what happens. We will see one by one the digestion of carbohydrates followed by the digestion of proteins, lipids, and nucleic acids. So how does the digestion takes place? So here you can see the salivary amylase, as I told you, will act upon the starch and convert them into maltose, maltotriose, and dextrins. So when it reaches the stomach, the pH of the stomach, no, will not allow the salivary amylase to act. So salivary amylase will be completely destroyed, and no amylase activity is seen in the gastric juice. Whereas the pancreas secretes the enzyme pancreatic amylase. Okay, so this will act upon the starch, and more of the starch will be converted into all these three: maltose, maltotriose, and alpha dextrins. Okay, so after the conversion, what happens? It goes down. There is the duodenal region. There is the Brunner's gland. Intestinal gland secretes brush border enzymes. So these are the enzymes called as dextrinase, maltase, sucrase, lactase. So these are the enzymes which will act upon the digested carbohydrates. So alpha dextrinase will act upon dextrins, convert them into glucose. Maltase will act upon maltose and convert them into two molecules of glucose. Lactase will act upon the lactose and convert them into uh, glucose and fructose. Um, So maltase, sucrase, and lactase convert the act upon maltose, sucrose, and lactose into the individual components glucose, glucose and fructose, and glucose and galactose. So now the digestion will be completed here, and after this, the duodenal brush border enzymes will start the absorption of the glucose. Okay, monosaccharides. All these are monosaccharides. The next one is the digestion of proteins. So digestion of the proteins starts in the stomach. So stomach secretes HCl. So the HCl will act upon the proteins and denature them and expose the individual bonds, okay, which will be acted upon by the pepsin. So the pepsin, which is secreted in the form of pepsinogen, will act upon the proteins, the denatured proteins, and it will convert them into peptides. So the main target of the pepsin is the aromatic amino acids. Okay, the aromatic amino acid tryptophan, tyrosine, etc. It will act upon the all the aromatic amino acids and convert them into peptides. When it enters the pancreas, that is the duodenal region, the pancreatic secretion secretes trypsin, chymotrypsin, and elastase and carboxypeptidase. So, what is the role of trypsin? Trypsin, just like the um, pepsin, acts upon the proteins, but the target is it will act upon the basic amino acids. Okay, basic amino acids and convert them into peptides. Whereas the chymotrypsin, which is secreted in the form of chymotrypsinogen, again acts upon the aromatic amino acids just like the pepsin and convert them into peptides. So elastase is another enzyme which will act upon the proteins and convert them into peptides. The last enzyme is carboxypeptidase. So you can see the other enzymes pepsin, trypsin, chymotrypsin and elastase are endopeptidases. So endopeptidases are enzymes which will act upon the amino acids which are present in the center, whereas this carboxypeptidase is an ectopeptidase. Okay, so this will act upon the amino acids which are present in the terminal ends. So especially the carboxy terminal end of the peptide. So the action of the pepsin, trypsin, chymotrypsin will cleave the protein into individual fragments, but the carboxypeptidase secreted in the pancreatic juice will act upon the terminal amino acids and cleave them one by one from the carboxy terminal end. So the result is individual amino acids and peptides are released. Okay. So when they enter that is the brush border enzymes secreted by the duodenal gland. So what do? They have enzymes, as you can see, like aminopeptidase. So aminopeptidase like carboxypeptidase is also an ectopeptidase, which will act upon the amino acids from the amino terminal end, again cleave them one by one and convert them into form more and more amino acids and peptides. Okay. Then finally, this brush border enzymes secrete the dipeptidase, tripeptidase, and so on, and they will act upon the dipeptide and the tripeptide and convert them into amino acids ready for absorption. The next one is the digestion of lipids. So lipids, the digestion of lipids is very, very important. A minor amount of lingual lipase will act upon the triglycerides to convert them into fatty acids and glycerol. Whereas the major digestion of the lipids takes place in the duodenal region, mainly because of the enzymes secreted by the pancreas and the bile by the liver. So what happens? The bile contains, the bile salts and bile acids. Okay, the bile salts and bile acids, especially the sodium and potassium salt of deoxycholic acid and folic acid. So what do? They help in the emulsification of the fat. Okay, the emulsification. What is emulsification of fat? It is a process where these bile salts will act upon the lipids. Okay, large lipid globules, and they break down into smaller lipid droplets or globules. So how do they act? Bile salts are amphipathic in nature. That means it has got a hydrophobic region, hydrophobic non-polar region, and also a hydrophilic region. So what do they do? The hydrophobic region reacts with the lipid, okay, and keeps it in the center, and the hydrophilic region of the bile salt will react with the water aqueous environment in the periphery. So what happens? Many number of bile salts come together. Okay, around 50 to 20 to 50 number of bile salts come together and they form a missile. So they completely surround the lipid droplets. Okay, lipid droplets, and that is the hydrophobic region interacting with the lipid and the hydrophilic region interacting with the water. So they make it water soluble and they carry it along. Okay, carry it to inside the lumen to be digested. So when they reach the duodenal region, what happens? The pancreatic lipase will act upon the triglycerides, okay, fats and oils that have been emulsified by the bile salt. That is, it cannot act upon the larger globules of fats. Okay, so only when they are converted into smaller lipid droplets, or you can call it as missils. Okay, this emulsification will increase the surface area available for the action upon the action of the lipase. So it will convert the fats and oils into fatty acids and glycerol, monoglycerides, diglycerides, and so on. So this is the main thing which will act upon the. So the same missiles are involved in the absorption of lipids that we will see in the coming slides. The same missile formation because of the bile salt, the amphithetic nature of the bile salts, they form missiles around the lipids, okay, which will help in the digestion as well as the absorption of the fats. So this is how they are absorbed. So apart from this, you have nucleic acids. So nucleic acids which are present in the food, okay, they will be acted upon by the nucleases, the ribonuclease and the deoxyribonuclease. Ribonuclease will act upon the RNA and convert them into nucleotides, whereas the deoxyribonuclease will act upon the deoxyribonucleic acid, DNA, and convert them into nucleotides. So there are some enzymes present in the secreted by the brush border called as nucleotidase, nucleosidase, and phosphatases. So they will act upon the nucleotides, nucleosides, and that is the remove the nitrogen base, pentoses, and phosphates, and completely I mean, convert them into individual components. So now all these are ready for absorption. So now we will see about the absorption. What happens now? Absorption in the small intestine. So as I told you, around 90 to 95% of the absorption is taking place in the small intestine. So that is what we are going to see in this slide. The absorption of digested nutrients in the small intestine. So for simplicity, all digested foods are shown in the lumen of the small intestine. So this is the lumen. Okay, this is the lumen of the small intestine. Okay, and you can see these are the absorptive cells of the small intestine, and these are the brush border. These brush border are called as the apical surface, that is the microvilli brush border. Apical surface, that is the side which is facing to the lumen, and this side is the basolateral surface which is facing the interstitial space and the capillaries of the blood vessels. This is how you have to see. Okay, so the absorption is a process where all the individual components of the nutrients, that is the glucose, galactose, fructose, amino acids, individual amino acids, dipeptides and tripeptides, and fatty acids, both short chain and long chain fatty acids and monoglycerides are absorbed. So these are all formed because of the digestion carried out by the different enzymes. Now, what happens to the digestion of monosaccharides? We will see one by one. So, glucose and galactose behaves in a similar manner, whereas fructose behaves in another manner. You can see the what are the different mechanisms by which their absorption is carried out is simple diffusion. You can say diffusion here. So when it is lipid soluble, simple diffusion. When it is water soluble, it needs some facilitated diffusion. Water is absorbed by osmosis. Okay, water is absorbed by a process called as osmosis. Okay, so you have diffusion, facilitated diffusion, and the help of chylomicrons, and also osmosis. So these are the different processes by which the absorption takes place. You can see fructose is a very small molecule, and this is present in the fruits. So they are transported via facilitated diffusion. Okay, fructose is transported via facilitated diffusion, whereas you can see the glucose and galactose They compete with another. Usually, the galactose competes with the glucose for the absorption and transportation. So they are transported by secondary active transport along with the sodium. So the transporter contains three sites. One for the attachment of the glucose or galactose, and two for the attachment of sodium. So this is a process by which one molecule of glucose and two molecules of sodium are transported across the absorptive cell. So this is one way process, so it is called as a symporter. So one molecule of glucose or galactose combines with two molecules of sodium, okay, and it is attached to a transporter which takes it to the other side. Okay, so this is see, you can see this is how it takes place. So this is fructose is transported by facilitated diffusion, whereas glucose and galactose are transported into the absorptive cell via secondary active transport coupled along with the sodium. So this is a process called as facilitated diffusion or the secondary active transport, okay, through a symporter. Next, you can see the absorption of amino acids. So, amino acids are absorbed separately, and the dipeptides and tripeptides are absorbed separately. You can see the amino acids. This is smaller in size, so they are also, just like the glucose and galactose, are transported via active transport or secondary active transport with the sodium, just like the glucose and galactose. Okay, so here also there is the involvement of a transporter which attaches amino acids with the sodium, and it is transported across. So the amino acids and the dipeptides, the proteins are present in the lumen of the digestive system. It is not only coming from the food substances that we eat, but also the enzymes. All the enzymes are proteins, are made up of proteins. So those enzymes, after their role in digestion, they are also present in the chyme along with the digested nutrients. So not only this, the inner layer of the digestive system will get slowed off. Okay, it will come wear and tear. It will also come along. So the nutrients present in the food, okay, the proteins present in the digested juice, and dead cells that is coming out of the mucosal surface. All this contribute to the amino acid pool. Okay, they will all be digested and they will contribute to the amino acid pool. So the individual amino acids are transported via secondary active transport along with sodium, whereas the dipeptide and the tripeptide are transported along with H plus, okay, hydrogen ions. Okay, this is, so these two are symporters. This utilizes sodium, and this is transported along with H plus. Okay, so the amino acids move. See, all these glucose, galactose, fructose amino acids, they all move into the absorptive cell, and here these, after they reach the amino acids, they diffuse from the absorptive cell into the interstitial fluid and then into the capillaries, and they enter the circulation. So the amino acids and the monosaccharides, they reach the capillary. You recall the capillary, that is the capillary and the arteriole present in the microvilli. So they are taken to the liver through the blood, okay, by way of hepatic portal system. Okay, hepatic portal system, and from the liver it reaches the general circulation. Now we will go on to the absorption of lipids. So lipids are, absorbed via simple diffusion. You can see there are the fatty acids are of different length. Some are short chain fatty acids, some are long chain fatty acids. So the short chain fatty acids undergo simple diffusion because they are hydrophobic in nature. They can easily move across the plasma membrane. So they are transported by simple diffusion, enter the absorptive cell, and again transported from the absorptive cell into the interstitial space, and then this is what this is the carried to the blood vessel. Okay, the small short chain fatty acids are carried to the blood vessels. Okay, so the in the adult, about 95% of the lipids are absorbed in this time, whereas in the young infants, the bile is not secreted in the newborn infants. You can see some infants show jaundice. So the absorption of the fatty acids will become difficult. Okay, that is not 90 to 95% will not be absorbed. Only to 80 to 85% will be absorbed, and those people who have undergone removal of gallbladder, they will also have some problem because of the shortage of bile acids. If the emulsification will not happen, so the digestion and absorption of the fatty acids will get affected, and they will be present in the feces. They will be lost in the feces. They will not be able to make use of the fats. Okay. Now the long chain fatty acids, that is short chain fatty acids, are having around less than 10 to 12 carbon atoms. Okay, so they are the short chain fatty acids are more water soluble. Okay, whereas long chain fatty acids, they are having the length is around more than 12 carbon atoms. Okay, so what happens? So the long chain fatty acids as well as the monoglycerides. Monoglycerides are glycerol plus one fatty acid. Long chain fatty acids are having more than 12 carbon atoms. So what happens? The bile salt. Okay, as I told you before, they envelope. Okay, they form an envelope around the long chain fatty acids and monoglyceride, and they form a missile. Okay, they form a missile and they carry. So because these are hydrophobic in nature, they cannot travel. Okay, so they are hydro, they I mean all these are present in the lumen. Okay, chyme, different regions. So they have to reach the cells. So already these cells are, in the rugae shaped. Okay, so they should be carried to the absorptive cell. So that is what is happening inside the lumen. So the bile salt will combine the amphipathic nature of the bile salt will form a missile around the fatty acid, and the monoglyceride. I hope you can understand. The hydrophobic region combined with the fatty acids, and the hydrophilic region surrounds. So around 20 to 50 bile salts are involved in the formation of a single missile. Okay, so they have become water soluble. So they simply diffuse across the lumen and reach the absorptive cell. Okay, at the apical surface. So when they reach here, they will be split into individual monoglycerides and the fatty acids. Okay, so when they enter the absorptive cell, what happens? They again combine together to form a triglyceride. Okay, now this triglyceride will combine with other cholesterol, phospholipids, and also it will be coated with the protein to form a chylomicron. Okay, so once they are inside the absorptive cells, the individual monosaccharide, there is a sorry monoglyceride and the fatty acids combine to form a triglyceride. This triglyceride further combines with cholesterol, phospholipids, and also proteins, coated with the proteins to form a chylomicrons. Now this chylomicrons can be transported from the absorptive cell to the interstitial spaces by a process called as exocytosis. Because they are very bulky in nature. Okay, they cannot enter the blood vessel or the capillary, so they are transported to the lacteal present in the villus, and then into the lymph, there is the lymph vessel. Okay, this is how the transportation takes place. The glucose, the monosaccharides and the amino acids are directly transported to the blood vessel, whereas the fatty acids are in the form of chylomicrons. They are very huge. As you can see, they are very huge, and they are transported into the lacteal of the villi. Then they enter the lymph vessel, and then they enter the liver, and forms the enterohepatic circulation. So what happens here? There is the cycle of bile salt secretion. Okay, so what happens when they reach the liver? They again split. Okay, the bile salts are removed, and they return. The That is the secretion of the bile by the liver, and they are reabsorbed. Okay, they are reabsorbed by the liver, and then they return to the blood. Okay, so the fatty acids also from the liver it enters the uh, blood vessel. You can see the next few slides. You can see this is called as the enterohepatic circulation. So, what is the enterohepatic circulation? The cycle process of the bile secretion by the hepatocytes, a reabsorption by the ileum. In the ileum, what happens when they reach the ileum? The bile salts which are coming up. See, bile salts carry the fatty acids up to the absorptive cell. Here it is, you know, they just leave the fatty acids and the what do you call the monoglycerides. So they go enter the ileum where they are reabsorbed again, and they are resecreted into the liver as a bile. Okay, this is called as enterohepatic circulation. Okay, so this can be obstructed in the if there is any gallbladder stone or obstructive gallbladder, etc. So we will move on. So here you can see what happens. Okay, so this is the villi. Okay, this is the villi, and you can see that is the blood capillaries. Okay, blood capillaries, and see how they are transported. These are blood capillaries, and the you can see this is the arteriole and this is the venule. You can see how the glucose, amino acids, galactose, monosaccharides and the amino acids travel via blood. They enter into the liver through the hepatic portal vein. They enter into the liver through the hepatic portal vein, and then they enter the heart. Okay, and then they go for the circulation. But whereas you can see the chylomicrons, okay, the chylomicrons, what happens, they cannot enter the blood vessel because the chylomicrons are huge. Okay, they can there is the openings, the holes of the capillary tubes are very small, which cannot where the chylomicrons cannot enter the blood vessel. Okay, because of the pores present in the capillaries are very small, the chylomicrons cannot enter the blood vessel, the capillaries. Okay, capillaries and the blood vessel. So that is why it is transported into the lacteal. Okay, so it goes to the lymph vessel. Okay, and joins the lymphatic vessel. See here, it directly goes into the and empties in the left subclavian vein. Okay, so when it empties in the left subclavian vein, then it enters the liver. Okay, liver, and then it is transported into the blood. Later it is transported into the blood. That is how it is happening. So in the liver, what happens, it again breaks down, converts it into individual ones, and it is supplied to the different parts of the body. So this is the difference between the absorption of the monosaccharides and amino acids and the lipids. Okay, lipids, they are present in the form of chylomicrons. As they are very huge, they cannot enter the capillaries and the blood vessels. So they have a separate system of transportation called the lacteal. Okay, it is absorbed through the lacteal, flows into the lymph vessel, and the larger lymphatic vessel enters the left subclavian vein, and then it will merge with the blood vessel and transported across. This is how the movement of the nutrients takes place. The next one, so now the absorption of carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids are over. Now we will see the absorption of electrolytes. So what are electrolytes? Electrolytes are, the charged molecules, Na plus, sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium, etc. So what happens? The sodium ions are, as we have seen, the different pump. Okay, sodium is transported along with the glucose and galactose. It is also transported along with the amino acids. Apart from this, there are other transport systems, that is the active transport system. You have the sodium potassium pump, okay, through which the diffusion of the sodium takes place. So mostly sodium is transported by secondary active transport in the symport system along with the monosaccharides and the amino acids. So the remaining thing, it is not lost in the feces. Where as it goes down, more and more of water reabsorption and electrolyte reabsorption takes place. So absorption of water also takes place by osmosis. Okay, osmosis. So the osmosis depends upon the the concentration gradient. Okay, along with the electrolytes or the charged ions, the water also will be absorbed. So water will move from a region of higher concentration and to a region of lower concentration. Okay, so that is how it takes place. So the absorption of the electrolytes and the water happens side by side. Whereas the absorption of vitamins, with there are two different types of vitamins: fat soluble vitamins and the water soluble vitamins. So what are the fat soluble vitamins? Vitamin A, D, E, and K. So just they behave just like the lipids. Okay, so they are also covered in the form of micelles. Okay, micelles, and they are absorbed just like the fatty acids by by converting them into micelles, and they enter the microvilli by simple diffusion. Whereas the water soluble vitamins like B and B complex and C, So they are water soluble. So they are simply absorbed by simple diffusion. Okay, just like that they are absorbed because they are water soluble.